Hello and welcome to Thank You to Creations podcast. I'm your host, Elle. And if you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. I have a great episode today. We are back to our normal content. I know that we're trying new things out. And if you all follow my unorganized, a little bit crazy antics, I did go ahead and create a separate podcast channel for all other stories and updates that are non haunting, science fiction, science real content because it just seemed like it made more sense. The last few episodes, we really got personal. We had a few amazing guests that we had come on the show, and we talked about some really personal life experiences, which was great, and we enjoyed that. But I do think that on brand, this specific channel has always been curiosity driven, whether it's hauntings or indigenous educational sources. And so we definitely want to go ahead and continue to do so on this specific channel. And so we're going to separate the both, but continue recording and continue having some amazing guests. So, with that being said, a little bit of an update as far as what the rest of the year is going to be looking like. I love doing the recordings. It is a lot of fun for me. It's actually my time to unwind for my normal corporate job, if you will. I do have a regular 8 to 5 for those who didn't know. And it takes a lot of energy, as I'm sure all of you can relate. So I usually get off and maybe disassociate for about 30 minutes and then continue about my day. Um, I have many projects that are still pending and I'm still working on. Of course, the books that I've written are still on Amazon. So whether you're into fun, cute little stories that I wrote about Biggie and Chester or the hauntings, which we have two books now out there, the Amazon links are still active and you can order your book. I'm sure Amazon Prime is still a thing. I feel like I'm getting a little bit ripped off because when I order, it takes about a week. But, that could just be because of where I live. I don't know. Hopefully, it's not the case for you all out there. I just feel like usually I would get things within 24 hours. Not the case anymore. Anyway, I could ramble on about the injustices of inflation and how I feel like every company is ripping us off, but that's not what this channel is about. So let's reel it back in. So, the matter at hand today, the subject at hand, is going to be hauntings in one of the most visited, I would say, cities internationally, known as Paris, France. So, growing up, I had a lot of girlfriends who wanted to go to Paris specifically because obviously called the city of love. I would get into it, but I really didn't look that up for that reason. But I believe it's because maybe a lot of couples tend to be driven out there for the Eiffel Tower, the pretty pictures, the croissants, the little cafes. Although I have caught more than a few videos on TikTok that show us the cities of Paris are not what we think they are. Definitely more like you're walking through a lot of the cities, maybe in Chicago, New York, a little overpopulated, not the cleanest. So there's that. I definitely still want to check it out. Not for, your regular touristy things, but because of the places we are about to get into. We're going to go through a quick list. I wouldn't say quick, it's about 10 different places in Paris that are considered to be the most haunted. Now, we're going to start at number 10. And as we proceed to the top three, that is where we're going to get more into detail about these places. We all know Paris is a very, very old city. And so, of course, when you're dealing with places that have been around for who knows how long, really, you're going to have more than one or two legends, and they're going to be correlated with hauntings because, of course, if you have followed our channel, we believe here, or I believe, should I say, that a ghost is really just energy that whether they knew what happened to them, didn't know what happened to them, have no idea where to go, and that energy is just left there to wander. for ages. And so, for cities that are this old, of course, you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people who have passed away throughout the years. And so, you're going to have that residual energy. So let's get started here. And please don't come for my pronunciation. I did not take French in high school like many of my other student, friends. I took Spanish because I am Mexican and I knew I was going to get an A. So don't come for me. The first place that we have on our list here that we found was the Place de la Concorde, which is a famous square said to be haunted by the spirits of those who were executed during the French Revolution. And so by execution, I'm sure they meant hangings. So who hasn't heard of the hangings that took place all over the world back during that era? Not fun. Number 9, we have the Abbaye de Cluny. So this medieval abbey is said to be haunted by the ghost of a monk. And I gotta say, I feel like I've heard a few different hauntings of monks. And it makes sense just because if we really think about what a monk does, right, which is connect with their inner spiritual being, and they have or should have a clear understanding of what happens after life, right? In the afterlife. So it makes sense that they would stick around, maybe knowing or unknowingly, in the areas that they lived in, especially if they were dedicated to their profession. And I am almost 100% sure a lot of these folk tales or these hauntings usually have to be in places of like church or monasteries. But I definitely have heard of other places where the ghost of monks would appear. Number 8, we have the Square du Temple, and this park is said to be haunted by the ghost of a young boy who was imprisoned in the nearby temple during the French Revolution. Again, we're mentioning pretty much a specific time and place in the city where a lot of death took place. And unfortunately, looks like in this case, it would be a young boy. Again, we have spoken about this in the past. It is very unfortunate when a small child passes because, for the most part, they don't understand exactly what happened and they will stick around looking maybe for their parents or looking for some kind of answer. It is ultimately very sad. And, I don't know if there's much that can be done unless you are some kind of clairvoyant and you're able to help them understand so that they can move on to the next life and so forth. For number 7, we have the Manor de Paris. This haunted house attraction is said to be built on the site of an old hospital where patients were mistreated, leading to reports of hauntings. So I've always been really creeped out by hospitals. That's just, since I was younger. And this specifically is why, because you know that unfortunately a lot of individuals pass away in hospitals. Again, they may not know the reason, they may not know that it happened, but their spirits will linger in the building for quite some time, or their energy, should I say, will linger in the building. And of course, besides the fact that there's death, there's a lot of suffering. All that, that we are uh, taking out of our bodies, like that suffering, that sadness, grief, it all gets stuck in those places. And so I could definitely recommend all these hospitals to get a spiritual cleanse, but of course, that's not what usually happens. And it's very unfortunate, that um, we just have tremendous loss in these buildings. Now, number 6, we have the Montparnasse Cemetery. So, this is one of, believe, a few cemeteries in Paris said to be haunted by various spirits. And of course, there are dead corpses everywhere. And so, you are probably going to see more than one or two spirits roam. You're going to feel that maybe creepy, icky energy on the grounds. There's a lot of grief, a lot of sadness when they're, put to rest. So this one's kind of a given. Cemeteries usually hold a lot of that type of energy. And number five, we have the Hotel de Sens. This historic building is rumored to be haunted by the ghost of a former mistress of King Henry the Sixth, I believe. Sorry, guys, I'm not very good at my Roman numerals. I feel like a lot of information I learned in um, grammar school, high school has left my brain, and a lot of unnecessary things have remained. But I do believe that is Henry the Fourth. Correction, Henry the Fourth. So this specific place is said to be haunted by the ghost of former mistress of King Henry the Fourth. And I wonder if it has something to do with the Tudors. You guys remember that show? It's an old one. Like, I think I had it on DVD. It was very highly sexual, and I don't remember if I finished the entire series or not, but it was something about King Henry. It's been a while since I looked it up. Number four, we have the Chateau de Versailles. While not in Paris, this palace is close enough to be included. It is said to be haunted by several spirits, including Marie Antoinette. And of course, who hasn't seen the movie with Kristen Dunst, I believe. Yes, Kristen Dunst, where she plays or portrays Marie Antoinette. I think there's probably a few other shows now and other movies since then that have been made, but very, very beautiful place. Actually, I looked up a few pictures. And now we're going to get to the top three locations set to be haunted. And we're going to actually talk a little bit more about these three. So, number three, we have the Opera Garnier. This beautiful opera house is said to be haunted by the ghost of a mysterious woman known as the Phantom of the Opera. So, I'm sure you all have either seen the books, seen the play, seen the movie of Phantom of the Opera. I've seen the movie and I've actually seen the theater play, and I saw it in Mexico, which was to me one of the best performances I've actually encountered. Fun story. When I was there and I was out there with family, we actually were pretty high at the top, to see the performance, and we made it maybe about 2 3 minutes too late back to the show or to the play. They have like specific times where they pause, they give you a break to go use the restroom, go get something to eat. And when we got back, it was completely pitch black, of course, but they let you know, like, hey, you have this amount of time to get back. Make sure you're back in your seat. And so, me and my family members were going in through the aisles. It is super dark. I missed a step, tripped, completely fell flat on my face on the chairs. We couldn't laugh. We tried not to because it was completely pitch black. And of course, the performance was already ongoing, already had started. But that's a little fun story for that when I did see the play in Mexico. And I saw that play in San Luis Potosi. So if you all travel out to Mexico, that city, I know we're kind of getting off topic, but that city is really beautiful, especially if you're not all about like the beach and Cancun and like, Cabo, San Luis Cabo, right? That's, you know what I mean. If you're not all about the beaches and the sun, San Luis Potosi is, I would say, a much calmer, obviously much smaller Mexico City, if you will. It was really affordable to get down there, and I believe from Texas it was about 2.5 hours to fly, so not terrible at all. Well, I think it was 4.5 because there's this weird thing that happens every time I fly down, even if it's really high north in Mexico. For whatever reason, I have to get out of Texas, go to Atlanta, Georgia, because it's one of the bigger right airports, and then go back to Mexico. Like, why we can't just go straight down? Have no idea, but it always happens that way. So it is about, I think, 4 hours or so, all in all. But worth it, worth a trip. They have a lot of art galleries, a lot of bookstores, a lot of really cute bakeries and restaurants. And I would say light jacket. This was sometime in October, I believe I went a few years ago. Light jacket is sufficient to withstand the little wind that goes on in the city. But back to the Opera Garnier. So, when looking up the actual hauntings, there was a few that really caught my attention, starting with the chandelier accident. So, they said, or it said that in one of the shows of the Phantom of the Opera, right? The dramatic finale of Act One, the Phantom cuts the chandelier loose from the ceiling and it comes crashing down on the stage. And it's said that this scene was inspired by a true event that happened in the Palais Garnier Palace, right, in 1896 when a counterweight supporting the chandelier detached and fell into the crowd. One person was killed and several were injured as a result. And as far as they know, it was a total freak accident, but they think perhaps there was some kind of malevolent spirit that caused it to fall down. And unfortunately, someone, passed away. Always scary because a lot of these, kind of buildings are old and who knows if they're maintained up to code. Always scary to stand under such a massive, I mean, it's beautiful, but such a massive, structure. And then, of course, there is the Legend of the Opera Ghost. So in 1873, the original Paris Opera venue on the nearby Rue Lepeletier, I probably murdered that, caught fire, destroying the space. And during the stage fire, a ballerina died and her fiance, the pianist, was disfigured as a result. And legend has it that after the incident, he retreated to the underground of the new opera house and lived there until his death, mirroring the physical appearance and living situation of the phantom character in the story. So some sources claim that a body was even found many years later beneath the Garnier, though it isn't clear who the corpse belonged to, since prisoners were also once held beneath the present day opera house. In any case, it seems quite likely there would be some lingering spirits hanging around. That's another type of building that is most likely filled with all sorts of energy, prison, because prisons are really sad places to be in. So those are kind of two additional little stories to the opera house. So for number two, one of the more known haunted locations in Paris is going to be Père Lachaise Cemetery. Probably murdered that as well, but here we are. So this is one of the most famous cemeteries in the world. It is the final resting place of many notable figures, and some visitors claim to have experienced ghostly encounters here. This one was actually really interesting because I did look up quite a lot of the pictures and a lot of the stories that people have shared online. First of all, the amount of detail that has been put into the cemetery, I know a lot of it's, unfortunately crumbling because it's old. It's definitely, you can see the age, but um, the just the structures that were made for these people to rest in are really beautiful. Some of them are kind of creepy, but they're really like really unique in how they were created. And so one of the more popular stories or popular celebrities, I guess, that are resting in the cemetery is going to be that of Jim Morrison. So, Jim Morrison, if you lived under a rock or maybe you're younger, I mean, I feel like most people have heard of Jim Morrison. He was the lead singer of The Doors until he died in 1971, and he was only 27 years old. The cause of death is still not clear, but there's a lot of talk that it was probably a drug overdose combination with some other kind of illness. Unfortunately, again, he passed at 27, and his grave is in the cemetery. It's said to be covered in graffiti, so it looks like his original one was actually stolen in 1981, or his bust was stolen in 1981. Not quite sure what a bust is. So a security guard watches over his grave because, it had been stolen in the past. Um, but at night, many visitors have said to see Jim wander around the cemetery, and some even claim to have captured his apparition in pictures. So, very interesting, and again, very possible. I mean, if you're going to try and capture, I would say, some kind of haunting, some kind of spirit, cemetery is probably the way to go. But you don't ever really know what you're going to find. So also proceed with caution, and do not come back and say, I told you to do it, because I wouldn't. Definitely not things I would mess around with. And so we continue with some other stories here. And the word I was looking for earlier was mausoleums. The mausoleums in this cemetery are beautiful. And for the most part, it seem like they're really well kept. So I'm sure they belong to generations of families who have been laying their loved ones to rest for centuries now because they are definitely very unique in how they were made. I think honestly for this specific cemetery, Jim Morrison's stories is probably the most interesting one. Obviously, there's other ones. There's noises that are heard. There's other apparitions. Security guards that stay overnight have heard voices. It's a little bit of what you would normally see or hear in hauntings, right? But number one, okay, number one is the reason why I want to go to Paris. And I've told this to many people, and everybody freaks out. Like, they do not want to join me on this fun journey to the catacombs of Paris. So, these underground ossuaries? Sorry. There's a word in here that I really actually don't even know what it means. So, I apologize. So, these underground tunnels, let's put it that way, hold the remains of millions of apparitions that are often associated with paranormal activity. So the catacombs have basically human skulls. Yeah, they're lined up with human skulls. That's what it is. I'm sure a lot of you have watched movies. There's one called As Above, So Below. That's one of the more popular ones, although there was also one that I don't remember the name of, but Pink, we all know who Pink is, was in the movie. And she lived in this really actually cool building in Paris, which again, it's one of my goals, I guess. I've always had this obsession with, I would say, the industrial look. So the industrial look of like a living space made very popular, I would say, in early 2000 movies. If y'all remember The Ring, the dad in the movie lived like in this huge industrial space where the elevator would actually just open up to his living area, to like his house, his apartment. So I've always kind of been this, I've had this like attraction, this obsession with industrial spaces for living areas. Anywho, so I think her building was actually just like really big, had a huge staircase. And again, like it just reminded me of like 90s living. So anyway, loved it. The idea behind the catacombs, though, or the wanting of my wanting to go see and learn more about these places. Um, it's just because there's so much history. There's so much history under the city, so much, I would say, mystery behind it as well. And of course, the tunnels are filled with many legends and some myths, I'm sure. I mean, we don't have all the evidence that these stories are real, but some of the ones that I found really interesting, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look at them here, is the uncovered video camera. So it's said that in the early 1990s, a group of cataphiles, and yes, I had to look up that word. It actually is people who study and means people who study and explore the Paris catacombs regularly. And again, if you all have seen As Above, So Below, that's exactly who they hire to help them navigate the tunnels is a cataphile. And again, so in the early 1990s, a group of cataphiles were walking through the dark chambers when they found a video camera on the ground. The camera still had footage on it. As they watched it, they heard disturbing noises. From the video, they could tell the man holding the camera was lost and had no idea how to escape. The more they watched it, the more it became clear the man was going mad or going crazy in the underground network of tunnels. And I do think I have seen that video in probably TikTok or YouTube, one of the two. Very creepy because you can tell by how he's breathing at that point. Either one, he was running out of air, or two, he is definitely afraid of what's going on. And you got to think about how dark it is down there, how damp it is, and just being surrounded by skeletons and skulls, how unnerving you're going to feel. So the video ends abruptly when the man drops the camera to the ground. And to this day, no one knows who he was or if he ever managed to get out alive. Of course, this is where they think As Above, So Below came up with the story. And again, we have voices, right? So another ongoing experience that is said is you can hear voices at night down there. Very possible. It's pretty much, dark and very, very big. So they are many stories about people who go down there again, whether during the day or night, whether it's legally or illegally, if they're trespassing, they hear disembodied voices that persuade them to venture even deeper into the catacombs. And it's happened to a few people where they get lost and they can't find a way out. So again, if you go to Paris to the catacombs, please get yourself a guide and do not get off the um, tour map, I guess, if you would. Always follow your guide. Even myself, when I go, I will definitely be getting a guide. I'm not that adventurous and I don't like dark spaces, so will not be me. Now, our third legend for the Paris catacombs is going to be the ghost of Philibert Aspart. So during the French Revolution, a man named Philibert was a doorman at the Val de Grace Hospital on a mission to fetch a certain liquor from a cellar. Philibert actually ended up entering the Paris catacombs by accident. Walking around the pitch black catacombs alone with just a single candle, he became lost and confused. Many believe he may have been intoxicated at the time, and ultimately his candle went out and everything turned black, making it impossible for him to escape the profound darkness of the catacombs. His body was found 11 years later by a group of cataphiles. So, again, these are a group of people who go down there on their own free will, and, well, you go looking for something, you're going to find something, right? They identified him by the hospital key ring hanging from his belt, and he is now buried in the catacombs in the exact place where he died, with a tombstone describing his death. So, cataphiles and catacombs folklorists say that every November 3rd, Philibert's ghost haunts the labyrinth of the catacombs. So, we go back to how we started and how certain spirits have no idea that they have passed. They don't understand what happened to them. And so, they roam our um, Earth, I guess. They roam our Earth looking for that answer or trying to cross over to whatever is on the other side. Very sad indeed, because it's just one of those things like imagine having a normal day at work and then something happens, you don't come back, and then you don't know how you got stuck between the living and the dead. Very, very sad and probably not fun. So, there you have it, guys. Our list of 10 of the most haunting locations in Paris, France. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I have many, many more coming throughout the year. I am trying to stay on a schedule here, but so far it seems like we're pushing to every 3 weeks. But of course, when I'm able to, we will have much more of a consistent schedule for these episodes. And of course, I'm always looking for suggestions as well as special guests. You have a creepy story, you have a favorite haunted location, you want to talk about anything indigenous, honestly, anything scientific. Specifically, I would say like cryptozoology or aliens, I am more than happy to get you on one of the episodes. All you have to do is either send me a private message on Instagram or leave a comment in any of our pages. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, and of course, all of our listening platforms, including Castbox, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible, Amazon Podcast, and I believe there's a few others. No, I think that's all. So definitely feel free to like and follow us, and remember to tune in. We will try to keep a schedule and obviously let you all know when the next episode is dropping. Thank you all for listening. and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.